If I asked you before the season which team would go on to produce the biggest win streak in the NBA, who would come to mind? Maybe the defending champion Denver Nuggets, the new-look Boston Celtics, or even Giannis, Dame, and the Bucks. Now, how far down that list would you have to go to find the Orlando Magic? Because they just won 9 games in a row, currently standing at 14-6 with the third best record in the entire league. The catalyst behind this success has been their incredible play on the defensive end. They've held the number 1 defense for a decent portion of the season and currently sit at number 4, allowing about 110.5 points every 100 possessions. What's super interesting though is that they're doing this without a couple of key defensive players. Many would consider Wendell Carter Jr. to be their most valuable defender. His ability to protect the rim, rebound, and switch at the 5 enables them to run a lot of different schemes, but he hasn't played in over a month. Then there's Markelle Fultz, their starting point guard who's turned himself into a quality point of attack guy. It's been 25 days since he's seen some action. While a lot of teams would lose 2 starters and immediately fall apart, that's right when Orlando started taking off, and I think it really highlights how deep the roster is. Let's start in the middle. Filling the void of Wendell has been Goga Bitadze, and I'll be the first to admit I had no idea he was this good defensively. Officially listed at 6'10" with a 7'2" wingspan, the big key is that size and length. But size is only a huge asset if used correctly, and when I watch them play defense, it stands out just how good he is at positioning himself. It's almost like whenever the offense tries to create anything, he's just always parked in the middle, showing his length. And he pairs that length and strong positioning with some sharp hands, meaning that he can really clog up the paint, whether that's by deflecting passes, stripping the ball, or blocking shots vertically. It's not just the paint protection either, he's also relatively mobile. I wouldn't say he's someone you can leave on an island and expect some lockdown isolation defense, but enough to where Orlando's comfortable switching with him at the 5, and that really unlocks an Orlando squad that's filled with versatility. Next to Goga in the front court, it's usually Franz Wagner and Paolo Banchero, and those two have quite a few things in common. For one, they're both really big forwards, standing 6'9" and 6'10", each with at least a 7-foot wingspan. Just think about how much length that is on the floor at one time, and usually that comes with a trade-off of speed, but these guys are also really mobile. They can defend in space without too much difficulty, and in the case of Paolo, he's a brick wall, so against centers, it's not at all a mismatch. So what you're left with is a starting front court of 3 guys who you're comfortable defending a variety of different positions and attackers, meaning there's always someone to put in front of the ball, and always someone to rotate down to the rim. One problem that's created by versatile forwards switching down though, is that it also forces the guards to switch up. Except Orlando doesn't really run into that issue in these lineups because the backcourt is every bit as switchable. At one spot you've got Jalen Suggs, an absolutely ferocious point of attack defender who's quick laterally, navigates screens, has incredible hands, really the entire package. What I didn't mention though is the size. He's 6'5", strong and vertically gifted, meaning that he can pick up bigger players when needed. He also has a non-stop motor and great recognition of both when and where to rotate as a helper, meaning that he can even offer some sort of secondary rim protection. And I think it goes without saying that when your primary on-ball guy can also defend in the paint, you're in pretty good shape. I wouldn't be surprised if come time to vote on awards, he's getting talked about as a serious candidate to make an all-defensive team. Rounding out their starting 5 leaves the injury replacement for Markelle Fultz, rookie Anthony Black. Of course, in typical Magic fashion, he's a 6'7" point guard, making Suggs the smallest guy on the floor. Not only does he bring more size and length, but for a 19-year-old, the way he reads the game and positions himself defensively is nothing short of impeccable. You want him at the point of attack? He'll find his way around screens. You want him at the nail? He'll use his sharp hands to turn away drives or rolls to the basket. You want him on the backline? He'll offer rim protection and high-level rotations that you can't find in many guards. In other words, he's kind of the ultimate plug-and-play young guard on defense, executing whatever the Magic need him to, and that falls right into place with the other 4 guys I've talked about. This 5-man lineup is Orlando's most used unit so far this season, playing 157 minutes together, and in that time, they've allowed just 111 points every 100 possessions, well above the league's average of 114. Let's be clear though, I'd expect them to look even better with Fultz and Wendell back. That original 5 was only able to mark 78 minutes in 4 games before injuries got the better of them, but they allowed about 95 per 100, which is really as good as it gets when talking about 5-man defensive units. You can't run the same 5 for all 48 though, and what's made the Magic so good as an overall defense is that depth. Cole Anthony's not big like the starters, but is an incredible athlete, super quick laterally, and knows how to avoid screens, so he can defend opposing guards pretty well. And next to him, you've got Gary Harris, who isn't quite what he used to be with injuries, age and whatnot, but still remains a solid defensive wing. In the middle, it's Mo Wagner, who's got some size and mobility, but isn't much of a presence at all near the rim. Finally, we've arrived at a key weakness. If only they had a forward on the bench who could protect the rim like a high-level big. Even after the injuries that kept him sidelined for nearly 3 full seasons, Jonathan Isaac looks like one of the best defenders on the planet. The versatility is just off the charts. He can take on literally every single role, protecting the rim, helping, clogging lanes, switching 1 through 5, executing different coverages against the pick and roll. You name it, and he's not just doing it, but succeeding. In other words, you just throw Isaac in any collection of players, and that lineup is seeing a huge boost defensively, which is why their defensive rating in his 201 minutes thus far lands at an outstanding 98.1. There's only one other guy in the rotation that I haven't yet touched on, and that's 36-year-old Joe Ingles. Now, don't get me wrong, Ingles is absolutely a traffic cone, and you won't get any verticality from him around the basket, but I must say his positional awareness and overall IQ are really high, so when you surround him with all of this athleticism and versatility, you're able to hide him pretty effectively, and he's not going to cause any breakdowns or make errors, so he's just another piece to the puzzle. Including the 2 missing starters, that's 12 players I've gone over, and only 2 of them have a noticeable defensive weakness, both of which come off the bench. They've got it all: resistance at the point of attack, some rim protection, tons of versatility, but in order to build a top defense, you also need a system that works and maximizes the personnel. I'm not going to sit here and act like head coach Jamal Mosley's a mad scientist who's paving the way for the future of defensive schemes, but I really like a lot of what they do. The first key is how good they are at getting back in transition. Notice how when Franz turns the ball over, instead of hanging his head, he immediately sprints down to the other end of the court so that he can stay in the play. And by just making that little extra effort, he turns what would have been an easy layup into a stop. Here's another example, this time from Jalen Suggs. He loses the ball and sticks with it every second of the way, chasing down Caruso for an absolutely vicious block in the last minute of the game. This one's after a missed 3, where LaVine looks to push the pace, and notice how 3 different Orlando defenders all converge near the top of the key so that they can shut off any potential drive. And as soon as Zach picks up his dribble to kick it to the wing, Ingles drops back and steals the pass. Because they're so good at stopping transition offense like this, teams are forced to play in the half court. And once the game slows down, then you'll see that priority number 1 is shutting off the paint by any means necessary. This one starts with a pick and pop, and because Isaac drops back, Anthony has to peel off the ball to pick up Vooch on the wing. But when Vooch attacks the closeout, Isaac moves on a string to shut off that lane, and look at how all three of the weak side defenders are also touching the paint, making it known that they aren't giving up an opportunity that close to the basket. Naturally, that means some shooters gotta be open, and when Vooch kicks it out, Anthony gets a hand on it to force a turnover. They aren't at all afraid to concede threes if it means protecting the rim. On an inbounds play, Poeltl frees up for just a brief moment as he slips to the basket, and Wagner, recognizing this, immediately sprints over from the weak side to not give up a finish. Now that of course leaves Scottie Barnes wide open in the opposite corner, but they'll take their chances with Scottie shooting a 3 over Poeltl taking a layup any day of the week. They really like to have the weak side low man over aggressively rotate like this. Cole Anthony's just 6'2", so you're not going to get some big time shot altering rim presence. But because he's positioned so far away from his man, when Patrick Williams beats Ingles on a backdoor cut, he can rotate to get to the ball early, saving what would have been an easy 2. Of course, the risk there is that if he didn't get a hand on the ball, Kobe White was left on an island, and the Magic have implemented a strategy to prevent these sort of easy opportunities. This time when Anthony again darts in from the weak side to pick up the ball, notice how the rest of the defense shifts behind him. Now, the only open guy would be DeRozan from the top of the key, not much of a threat, but Dosunmu instead forces it to the corner, and that quick advantage leads to nothing. Just because they're prioritizing the rim though, doesn't mean they're over-helping. This time when Io drives, he's expecting Isaac to make that aggressive rotation, but he stays home, and once again it's a turnover. And in the same way they prioritize the rim, but don't always over-rotate, they don't always give up easy switches. I know I keep talking about the ability for them to pretty much switch across the board, but they use it as a tool that they can go to, not always. And instead of conceding easy switches that the offense wants, they'll often stick to a more traditional coverage to prevent any advantages. When Goga comes up to the level of the screen, it looks like it might be a switch, but actually it's more of a sliding hedge, because when Caruso gets the ball for an easier angle to hit the roll, the opportunity is non-existent. And when it gets back to LaVine, the defense is perfectly set, and all he can really do is isolate, where Anthony Black's able to get a hand up on a tough jumper. It's only when they have a miscommunication or mess up the coverage that they'll go to a switch, and it's always so seamless. LaVine beats Black on a backdoor cut, so Banchero picks him up, but nobody goes with Caruso. So as soon as Drummond kicks it to the wing, Goga closes that space, and it's still a decent look, but far from an unsurvivable breakdown. When everything comes together, the personnel, strategy, and execution, that's when you see results like what Orlando's been doing to start the season. Through 20 games, they've held their opponents to more than 4 points below the league's average offensive rating, the mark of a real high-level defense. But in order to win as much as the Magic have, it also takes a competent offense. A big key for them offensively is that all of the primary ball handlers are good at getting to the rim, and by proxy, all of that rim pressure means they're able to generate a bunch of free throws. At 27.9 a game, they actually lead the entire NBA in free throw attempts, so they're getting a decent amount of easy points. With that said, in order to maximize all of that slashing, they're gonna need a decent amount of space to operate with. Unfortunately, they have one of the worst three-point shooting rosters top to bottom in the league, landing in the bottom 10 in both volume and efficiency. Just think about the starting lineup for a sec. Anthony Black is shooting 29% from 3, Goga straight up doesn't take them, so that leaves Suggs, Paolo, and Franz, 3 slashers. Suggs is hitting right now, but it's a small enough sample to still raise some questions because over his 120 game career, he's been at just 29%. Same thing with Paolo, 44% right now, but 30% last year, so I'm sure there's a nice middle ground somewhere. That leaves Franz, who had a cold start to the season, but I'd comfortably say he's the best shooter in the lineup. And because Franz pairs the slashing and shooting threat like nobody else, I think he's pretty clearly the centerpiece of their offense. He combines those two key skills with high quality passing and efficient low turnover ball handling, meaning he's able to create a lot of offense for guys around him. But he also adds the off-ball stuff, spotting up and spacing the floor, attacking off the catch, moving the ball with sharp decisions, and due to that multi-layered attack, he gives them a ton of flexibility at the forward spot, capable of playing in isolation, running the pick and roll as a ball handler or screener, flying off of screens in set action, or finishing plays as a cutter. Of course, he's doing all of that next to Paolo Banchero, and just like on defense, the versatility of those two really opens things up. Paolo's another guy who you can run offense through in a variety of ways. A huge forward with ball skills who can get to the rim but also has a solid in-between game and some playmaking. And that means he can isolate from anywhere on the floor, be used as an initiator or screener, and he's even developed a pretty strong low post game. Franz and Paolo both being role chameleons gives the starting unit a solid floor as an offense, even if the other guys aren't big time spacers. As long as they give you some sort of complementary skills, it'll lead to competent offense. In the case of Goga, you get a solid interior presence, finishing plays at the rim or getting on the offensive glass to create second chance opportunities. But the big thing is that he's a really good passer and connector. This means that they can actually run offense through him as a hub in the middle of the floor, initiating off-ball action or moving laterally through the dribble handoff game. And in that way, he's able to open up the lane for those slashers and athletic cutters. With Suggs, it's primarily the combination of slashing and passing. Another guy who can generate downhill pressure and create for others, again just keeping ball skill on the floor. With Anthony Black though, he still looks pretty raw. He hasn't shot the ball well at all, is turning it over, and isn't doing much creating. But like I mentioned on defense, his IQ is really high, and he just knows how to play the game. So at the very least, you're getting a guy who can fill out space and execute the system through his movement. Despite the rawness, there are two important reasons that the Magic keep Black in the starting lineup. One is his aforementioned defensive versatility. The second is so that they can keep Cole Anthony on the bench. Anthony's a great slasher with an awesome in-between game and about average pull-up three-point shooting. But most importantly, he's a really good playmaker. And by keeping him on the bench, that means when he comes into the game, he's going against other bench units, and that shot creation is dialed up to another level. The Magic run almost all of their bench offense through him, lots of pick and roll, or using his athleticism by running him off of handoffs, and they surround him with guys who can just finish the plays that he makes. Mo Wagner's a big-time finisher around the rim, whether that's out of the pick and roll, dump-offs, offensive rebounds, so if you put him next to a good creator like Cole, he'll give you some nice scoring, currently third in the NBA at 71% true shooting. With that play finishing, he also has a pretty nice post game, so that gives the unit another avenue of creation or a way to punish switches when needed. On the perimeter, they have Gary Harris, who's by far the best shooter on the team, which is more valuable than words can describe. Over the last 3 seasons, he's hit an impressive 42% of his threes off the catch. And even more staggering is the 47.7% he shot when wide open. There's lots of movement in his game. They'll run quick screening actions to get him some space, and the big thing is that he doesn't make any errors. Just accurate jump shooting, quick drives, or moving the ball and trying to get open another way. His game is just so efficient. Because Orlando has so many different creators, slashers, and quality passers, having a guy who can just capitalize on those opportunities really synergizes and takes the lineups to a new level, which is why he looks like such an impactful player statistically. In the 300 minutes he's played this season, the Magic have a 121 offensive rating. That's elite. And in the 647 without him, just 112.3. Not so great. And it's not just a lineup thing either, because you can see that synergistic effect with quite literally every single player on the team, whether it's with the bench, Starters, he takes the offense to new heights regardless of the context. You'll find the exact same thing with Joe Ingles. The ability to simply shoot and pass goes a long way. His signal on the team's offense is even stronger than Gary's, a 124 offensive rating when he's on the floor and 109.4 when he's off. Here's another interesting number to highlight the importance of a guy like Ingles. The Magic have 38 different two-man pairings that have played at least 100 minutes this season. And of those duos, the one that's produced the best offense is Ingles and Jalen Suggs, followed in second by Ingles and Paolo Banchero. Like I said, the combination of shooting and passing goes a long way. So when you have a creator like Anthony, two shooters like Harris and Ingles, and an interior presence like Wagner, it doesn't take a superstar offensive engine to round out the bench. Jonathan Isaac's pretty exclusively used as a play finisher, spotting up in the corner, cutting on the baseline, or screening and rolling in the middle, and that's all you really need him to do because of how much talent there is in these lineups. Orlando's bench is scoring 47.3 points per game, tied for first in the NBA with the Pacers, and that type of production from the second unit is so valuable because they have so much depth and so many different skilled players they can put on the floor on both ends. Paolo and Franz are the only two players on the team averaging above 27 minutes a game. But with the bench being so good, you'll have these weird numbers that suggest the team is actually better when Franz and Paolo are off the floor, so try not to fall for those. I know how people can get about on-off splits. It's also important to note that all of their ball handlers are young, which means they're more prone to errors. So in addition to the lack of shooting, they tend to turn the ball over a decent amount, and that combination caps the ceiling of the offense. Right now they're scoring about 115 points per 100 possessions, slightly above average and 14th in the NBA, which might not sound like too much, but when you pair that with a top 5 defense, that's when you start to see results. I think they could use some more shooting in the first unit, maximizing guys like Paolo and Franz, but you also don't want to sacrifice what you have with that bench. A spread pick and roll setup for Cole Anthony that absolutely torches opposing second units. So there's some food for thought to leave you with. And remember, they're missing two of their usual starters. The age, the depth, the two-way play is all there, and the Magic are looking to be a way better team than I think people initially realized. If you enjoyed this breakdown, make sure to drop a like, subscribe, and turn my post notifications on to be first on more content. If you're interested in my more in-depth research, make sure to check out my website and social media profiles. You can find those links in the description. Feel free to let me know down in the comments what you think of the Magic. As always, I hope you all have a great day, and I'll catch you guys in the next one.